I just get really frustrated by the expectation that contraception is always going to happen to the female body.
Now, this is a question that came in, which I'm just going to summarize it because it goes into a little bit too much detail that I think is not necessary. But I do think it's a very important question. All right, so me and my beautiful husband of 10 years have two incredible children. My husband is completely against having another baby. This sounds very familiar to me. My husband is completely against having another baby. And so I guess I have come to the resolution that this is what our family unit will be. As such, I have broached the conversation with him around having a vasectomy because I don't feel as though I should be responsible for birth control now that he is the one making the decision that he doesn't want to have any more children. He has completely taken the idea of vasectomy off the table and says he will not have one. And I think that although he should have body autonomy, I think it is an unfair expectation that he won't do it. What are your thoughts on this?
Dun, dun, dun. I actually think this extends beyond the vasectomy conversation, and for me it broaches into the whole onus of contraception, and it's something that I get a little bit fired up about. I mean, I've got skin in this game. I've got PCOS, which is a hormonal condition, and so I have found myself leaning away from hormonal contraceptive.
Pull-out methods, not very effective. Let me tell you that. 2 times, baby.
No, we've resulted in using, sorry for the too much information into my own life, but we've resulted in using condoms because I right now don't want to be on a hormonal contraceptive.
Yeah.
And I just get really frustrated by the expectation that contraception is always going to happen to the female body in
Forever.
whatever way that may be. So whether that's IUD, whether it's, a copper one or whether it's a hormonal one, whether it's the contraceptive pill, there are other options. I'm not as familiar with them. So I do feel frustrated that the onus of contraception seems to always fall on women, whereas in your particular circumstance, you're quite open to having another child, and he's the one who has decided that he doesn't want to have any more children, and yet he doesn't want to change anything about his own body. And I'm not trying to take away from the fact that a vasectomy is a surgical procedure. Researchers show that there are no adverse effects long-term for men for having vasectomies. It frustrates me. The procedure is actually very simple. It's a 15-minute procedure that happens under anaesthetic, and the doctors who do them do about 20 a day. If I was to compare that to what I think women go through, particularly in terms of contraception or in terms of childbirth, as you've done twice.
It's non-comparable.
It's just not.
I think men need to talk about vasectomies more. I know so many men who have had vasectomies. Some of them have been voluntarily. I mean, actually, they've all been voluntary. No one's been held down. I'm going to snip you. They've all been voluntarily and consensually. But I mean, some of the dads, some of the husbands were like, I'm going to go and get a vasectomy because I don't want to be in a situation of us having an unplanned pregnancy. And some of them were at the request of their partners who said, well, if this is where we're at, please go and have a vasectomy. And Matt and I have spoken about it a lot because I have a lot of similarities in this question because we have 2 children. I would like to have another one. Matt doesn't. We've spoken about that on the podcast. That's not news. But he won't go and get a vasectomy yet. And so he's acknowledged that his not wanting to go and get a vasectomy yet means the door isn't shut. He's not saying, I'm not going to get a vasectomy, but don't get pregnant. He's not putting that on me. He's like, I'm not getting one because I'm just not sure. He's not completely sure. So I'm like, okay, fair game.
I guess I feel a little bit like I assumed in your situation, the woman who's written in, that your husband is expecting you to take care of contraception. And you haven't specifically said that. So sorry if that's not the case. I think it's just a societal thing that I feel exists in most relationships.
Yeah, I would say once you're in a committed relationship, majority of contraception falls on the female. I would say that, and this is anecdotal, I don't have, I'm not gone around and surveyed individual couples, but I would say you using condoms within your committed relationship, Keesh, is probably more the minority. I would say most people have got a Mirena, they're on birth control or whatever that looks like. I think it's so interesting because you guys might remember quite a while ago, there was a male contraceptive pill that was being tested and it was going to go to market. So it was a hormonal pill that men could take that would reduce their sperm count for a period of time.
It actually reduced their sperm motility, which was very interesting because a lot of men were like, I don't want to feel like less of a man. I don't want to feel less of an ejaculation. And the scientists were like, you will not feel a difference. It's just that your sperm will not swim fast enough.
They're going to swim into the
Literally,
sidewalls, basically.
Yeah.
Well, they did this big study that was across multiple countries, had multiple male participants. But the reason why that pill doesn't exist, so this was 2012, I think, at the time. The reason why that pill doesn't exist is because too many men were dropping out of the trial studies on the basis of side effects. Now, I'd love to read to you some of the side effects that were experienced by men. The most common side effect was acne, and sometimes that acne was pretty severe. Some men also developed mood swings, and in some cases, those mood swings got pretty bad. One man developed severe depression. One thing that they did also note is that every single one of the side effects that were experienced by men who dropped out of the study are also experienced by women who go on to hormonal birth control. And so the big question is why do men have the luxury of opting out of the consideration of birth control and we don't? And it's because it affects our body. We're the ones who have to carry a child. We're the ones who are dealing with the consequences of what happens if birth control doesn't work. That's the reality of it. It is our issue to deal with, even though it shouldn't just be ours. The place I get stuck on this is, we preach body autonomy. We talk about how it's your body, you need to be all consenting. But I do feel that there is a gray area when it comes to vasectomies. And the reason why I say that is because I think, well, if your partner is refusing to get a vasectomy, that is okay. They are allowed to completely have body autonomy, but they need to wear a condom every time you have sex. I think then the responsibility of birth control falls on them. But I guess at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't want to take responsibility for it and he's the one who's putting down the benchmark of how many children you are or aren't having, then it has to be something that he takes responsibility for in some way. And I guess the way in which you could approach this is understanding why, asking him why he doesn't want to have a vasectomy. Because, if I hadn't spoken to Matt and really understood the why, I would be angry as well. I'd be like, you've said no kids and that's off the table. Why won't you do this?
Do you feel comfortable sharing his reasons?
Yeah, it's because he hasn't closed the door.
Okay,
so
right.
His reasons weren't around like, I don't want to feel less of a man. I don't want anyone to tamper with my body, blah, blah, blah. His reasons were, I know I say I don't want to have another kid, but then when I think about the idea of that option being completely off the table, he's like, something in me feels weird by that. Something in me feels as though maybe we need to keep the door ajar just in case. And I appreciate that, because I think that the conversation is forever on the table for us and we're still evolving as our kids get older and as our workloads change, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that there's still a place of understanding and conversation for us. It doesn't sound like that exists for this couple necessarily. So I think it's really important to understand the why and also maybe to get your partner to go and speak to a doctor or speak to someone about it so at least they've explored what that looks like, because he's assuming he knows everything there is to know about it. He's assuming he knows how it's going to impact him, what, long-term impacts it's going to have. Maybe he thinks it's going to change his like manliness or his virility or whatever it is. Like, I think it's important for him to have a deep understanding of what that looks like to then make an informed decision so that you guys can both feel comfortable about it. But I do think it's a tricky one because I don't think you can tell him he has to have a vasectomy, but I think it's wrong of him to completely rule it out without exploring it when he's the one who's setting such severe boundaries within the relationship.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm being a little bit too hectic about this. A part of me feels frustrated that you are the one who has to tell him to go and seek the information, because we are always expected to seek information about our own contraceptive options.
Totally.
You know what? In a heterosexual relationship, very few men have a thorough understanding of female contraception. And I get a little bit frustrated that the onus again seems to be on you suggesting that he go and research vasectomies or, they should be doing this shit themselves. If they've made the decision that they don't want to have any more children, be proactive about it. Find out what your options are so that you have a lifestyle that you choose. I get a little bit annoyed by that. And I know that it exists for so many women.
I think it's a little bit selfish.
Yeah.
I do think that if you're in a relationship with someone, they've chosen not to have any more children, they have the opportunity to take some responsibility for contraception, especially when you as a woman have provided them with 2 children. You have birthed 2 children, you have grown 2 children. Your body has made so many sacrifices for your relationship. You have, up until the point of having kids, controlled the birth control aspect. Then you got pregnant, did everything that you had to do, birthed out 2 kids, maybe breastfed them if you could or couldn't. Your body's done the work. You've done everything. They just have to go into a doctor and have a 15-minute procedure on their lunch break. I know that we need to respect body autonomy, but come the fuck on. Just go and do it. So part of me think I agree with her, but I think approach it with a bit more empathy for maybe, because you'll get a better outcome, and try and get him to go and seek out a bit more understanding around what it actually requires.